There is a rule in football so automatic, so assumed, that most players learn it before they ever play a professional match. If you receive a straight red card in a match, you miss the next game. No appeal, no exceptions. That is how it has worked in this sport for as long as most people can remember. The rule exists precisely because simplicity is part of the point. A rule everyone understands equally is a rule no one can argue around. At the 2026 FIFA World Cup, that rule held for every single team in the tournament. Every team, that is, until one night in July when it did not. The story begins in a stadium in California, in the final minutes of a round of 32 match that the host nation needed to win. A striker for the United States received a straight red card near the end of a victory over Bosnia and Herzegovina. Under the written rules of the tournament, the consequence was immediate and clear. He would miss the next match, the round of 16 fixture against Belgium. The U.S. Soccer Federation confirmed publicly that no appeal was available. For a day, that appeared to be the end of it. An unfortunate decision in an important match, subject to the rules that govern all such decisions. Then, a different kind of conversation appears to have begun, not through a legal team or a federation appeal, through a phone call. The President of the United States confirmed in public, in response to a direct question, that he personally spoke with the President of FIFA and asked for a review of the red card decision. Days after that phone call, FIFA announced it would suspend the player's automatic one-match ban for 1 year, citing an article of its own bylaws that most observers had never heard applied this way before. The player played, the match went ahead, and football suddenly had a very different conversation on its hands. The reaction across the football world arrived quickly, and it was not gentle. Belgium's Football Federation issued a formal statement calling the decision, in their direct words, in direct contradiction with the provisions of the FIFA World Cup's own competition regulations. Belgium's head coach, speaking to reporters, said he initially assumed the announcement was an April Fool's joke. He noted, for context, that it was July. Belgium formally submitted an appeal to FIFA's disciplinary committee. FIFA rejected it the same day. Grounds for rejection: Belgium, as a federation that was not a named party to the original disciplinary proceedings, had no legal standing to file an appeal at all. That meant the only institution with standing to review FIFA's decision was FIFA itself. The mechanism for external challenge simply did not exist. UEFA, the body that governs European football and represents 55 national associations, then issued a statement that went well beyond ordinary diplomatic concern. UEFA said FIFA had crossed a red line. It said that when the certainty of rules is no longer guaranteed by those responsible for enforcing them, the integrity of the game is at stake. UEFA added that it expressed its disbelief at what it called an unprecedented, incomprehensible, and unjustifiable decision. Those are not words football governing bodies typically use about each other. Separately, several prominent figures in the game used language that was considerably less formal than UEFA's statement. A former World Cup winner called it an absolute disgrace. A prominent commentator said it would be remembered as the biggest scandal the tournament had produced. FIFA's response was precise. It described the process as legally independent, stated that committee members met all relevant governance criteria, and made no reference to any outside communication. FIFA also noted that a comparable use of discretionary power had already occurred earlier in the same tournament, involving a Portuguese player whose 3-match ban had been reduced to 1. That earlier decision had attracted relatively little attention at the time. A head of state had not publicly confirmed asking for it. To make sense of what this week revealed, it helps to step back from the specific incident and look at the structure it exposed. FIFA is a private membership organization. It is not a government. It does not answer to any parliament, any court, or any external regulatory body in any ordinary legal sense. It writes its own rules, administers its own competitions, and runs its own disciplinary processes. When those processes are challenged, the appeals process leads back to FIFA's own bodies. This structure is not unique to FIFA. Many international sports governing bodies operate this way. It developed over more than a century of international sport. The advantage of this structure is stability. A body that writes and enforces its own rules can respond quickly, maintain consistency across very different national legal systems, and protect the sport from being pulled in different directions by different governments. The disadvantage is what this week made visible. When the body with the rulemaking power also holds the disciplinary power and also controls the appeals process, external oversight is structurally limited. The automatic one-match ban is not just a rule about punishment, it is a signal. It tells every team, every player, and every federation that the same consequence applies regardless of who you are or where your match is being played. When one of those boxes appears to change shape based on factors outside the match itself, the signal changes too. This is the specific argument UEFA was making. Not that FIFA had broken a written law, but that it had weakened the signal that the written law was designed to send. Trust in sport is easy to describe and genuinely difficult to rebuild once it has been visibly tested. It is also the thing that makes sport commercially and emotionally valuable. Without the reasonable belief that results are decided on the pitch, spectators are not watching a competition, they are watching a performance whose outcome may already be shaped elsewhere. The host nation dimension matters to this analysis not as a political judgment, but as a structural observation. At every World Cup in history, the host nation generates a significant portion of the tournament's commercial value. Ticket sales, broadcast deals, and local sponsorships all benefit when the host team advances. This creates a structural pressure on the host nation's performance that exists entirely independently of any individual decision or any individual actor's intentions. That pressure is documented across multiple World Cups and multiple host nations. It is not an accusation, it is a pattern in the data. What is unusual about this specific instance is the degree to which the pressure became visible and public, and the degree to which it was confirmed by the parties involved. In most previous cases, if external pressure existed, it operated quietly. The decision was made, the rationale was given, the match was played. Here, the head of state confirmed the call, the governing body confirmed a similar outcome had occurred earlier in the same tournament, and the formal channel for an external challenge was closed on procedural grounds. Each of those individual facts is verifiable. What they add up to, collectively, is a subject on which reasonable and informed people continue to disagree. Belgium, having exhausted their formal options, faced a decision that most teams in sport eventually have to make. They could continue to protest publicly, refuse to cooperate, or find some other form of escalation. Or they could concentrate on the match in front of them, trusting that the sporting result would be what it would be. They chose the match. Their coaching staff prepared. Their players showed up. Their comments in press conferences were pointed but measured. The match was played. As a sporting contest, it delivered something that no advanced script could have arranged. The United States lost by 4-1. The player at the center of the entire controversy did not score. The intervention that had provoked UEFA, generated global headlines, and prompted public statements from national federations did not change the sporting result. Belgium advanced. The United States went home. The tournament continued into the quarterfinals. That sporting fact does not make the structural questions smaller. If anything, it separates them cleanly from the result. The debate about whether FIFA's process was appropriate now stands on its own, independent of whether the decision ultimately benefited the team it appeared to favor. That is, analytically, a cleaner situation than if the US had won the tournament. It removes the contamination of outcome from the question of process. If a future team benefits from a similar decision and goes on to win, the legitimacy questions will follow that result through every subsequent match and every subsequent celebration. That possibility, and not this week's specific scoreline, is what makes the precedent matter. So what is the state of things as this tournament heads into its final stages? FIFA's disciplinary processes have now been publicly questioned by UEFA, by multiple national federations, and by a significant portion of the sport's most recognized voices. FIFA has defended its independence and the legal basis for its decision. It has not, as of this episode's production, announced any review of the underlying process or the rule in question. Belgium's formal appeal was rejected. No other mechanism for external review of the decision appears to exist within FIFA's current governance structure. UEFA's statement has not, so far, been followed by any formal action such as a boycott, a withdrawal, or a legal challenge in an external court. That gap between a very strong statement and very limited formal recourse is itself a reflection of how the current governance structure is designed. The question of whether a World Cup host nation's government should be able to influence disciplinary decisions affecting its own players is now explicitly in public conversation in a way it was not before this week. That conversation did not exist before this week in this form. It will not disappear simply because the tournament ends. FIFA's governance has been the subject of significant reform discussion before, most notably following a separate corruption investigation in the previous decade. Some of the reforms from that period were structural, others were largely cosmetic. The self-referential nature of the disciplinary process remained largely intact. Whether this week's events generate any meaningful reform to that process is genuinely unknown. It depends on decisions that have not yet been made by people who have not yet been asked formally. What can be said is that the case for reform of the external oversight mechanism is now considerably stronger than it was a week ago, because the gap in that mechanism has been made this visible. For every other team currently still in the tournament, The implicit assurance that the rules apply equally to everyone has been tested in a way that will be very difficult to fully repair before the final whistle. For football fans watching from countries whose governments have less leverage over international sporting bodies, the week raised a question that is straightforward and uncomfortable. If this can happen for one team, in one tournament, because of one phone call, what is the actual mechanism that prevents it from happening again for any team with enough political proximity to the right conversation? That question does not have a comfortable answer in the current structure, and it is the question that will remain after the last match is played and the trophy is lifted. Football has survived bigger crises than a disputed suspension. The sport is resilient, its audience is loyal, and its commercial machine is very large. But resilience is not the same as health, and large commercial machines have historically been very effective at absorbing uncomfortable questions without resolving them. The game continues. The quarterfinals will be played. Someone will win the World Cup, and for most people watching, the football will be the thing they remember. For the smaller group of people thinking about governance, oversight, and the long-term health of the sports institutions, this week will be the thing they remember. And this series will keep looking at exactly that kind of gap. That is what the Offside is here to do.